for joining. Thank you, everybody. Thank you here. Anna Knight is joining us. Alexander Ponce is online joining us, and James Wiggins is also online. They're going to tell us about their experience teaching, especially teaching at the 7 to 12 level. We're here with the Historians Craft Seminar. This is our Careers for Historians, Careers for History Majors series, event number 3, Future History Teachers. And we have a special guest today from the Career Center. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Lauren Williams, who's going to tell us a little bit about the Career Center and their services. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Professor Murray, and good evening.
Anybody want coffee? I'll make it.
Sorry,
Lauren, please go ahead.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Thank you, Professor Murray. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lauren, and I'm one of the counselors from the Career Center, of course, to just briefly overview who we are, our purpose, our services for y'all, and of course, some upcoming events. So again, thank you for inviting me a part of your session to, of course, discuss that and to discuss who we are, essentially, and how we can contribute to essentially your career readiness. So I essentially like to discuss us maybe in a nutshell with this quote, because we follow an association called NACE. So essentially, it's an association that does surveys between colleges and employers that did this report that 93% of employers seek graduates and those who obtain career readiness skills. So of course, this might be an obvious statement, right? But really, I like to emphasize the intentionality when it comes to obtain career readiness skills. So part of which is being in this presentation today, right? You're being intentional with the different career pathways that are available with your areas of study, right? And how best you can be maybe in a sense prepared for that. So, and that's an overview, right? And maybe in a simplified way. But also you can think about it maybe in different avenues and how you can prepare, right? So of course there are different avenues, and I won't go down maybe a rabbit hole because we definitely can on these different topics. And you don't have to maybe in a sense memorize these topics or these maybe competencies, but just being aware that career readiness is preparing yourself for what I like to say that lifelong management, right? So you're really equipping your skills to be ready for your position in the industry and how you can manage that in the maybe upcoming years and what that looks like for you. So we design our workshops, our events around these competencies. We also develop our different we design and focus on what I like to call career capitals, but we also advise on these. So what does that mean? It means helping you to understand your knowing why, which is your values, what inspires, what motivates you, or maybe what connects you, right? What makes you passionate about your work. Also, your knowing how, so building your skills, what you have to offer, how can you maybe express that? Then getting down to your whom, so building your networks. And of course, we have different career fairs and different events, some of which I'll talk about which too. But we also, again, design our outcomes, our workshops, our details when it comes to your preparedness overview sense. Okay, so now I talked about this in an overview, a little bit of some of the resources that we follow that contribute to your overall preparedness, some of our resources and services in a detail, in a nutshell. And what does that look like for you? Especially if you've never been to the Career Center before too as well. So some of which first is we help with the career exploration and planning. So essentially in our one-on-one advising appointments, drop-in sessions that we have, we can help to create action plan for maybe that career pathway that you're interested in and how you can best maybe maximize your preparedness for that role, right? Because we can definitely be a resource in tandem with all your other departments and resources on campus. We can be one of those to also contribute to that. And then, of course, I think one of our more popular services is our resume and cover letter writing, which I think is great because if that gets your foot in the door for us to check your document, especially if you're like, well, I have a resume, but I've never had another pair of eyes look at it. I think that can be definitely a good help and resource for yourself when it comes to helping you to have the best maybe application for that job. And then I like to say your application gets you to the interview, right? So helping as far as the interview, mock interview, the practice, what types of questions you should prepare for or maybe utilize. I think it's also really a great maybe a strategy, right, for being that best candidate or maximizing yourself for that candidate for that role. And then as well as finding what those roles are. So I think the job search is such a gray area. There's never such a maybe a clear question, or I'm sorry, a clear answer to like, how do I find this job? Because of course there's different avenues such as online platforms, right? We have Handshake, there's Indeed, there's LinkedIn as popular ones. Then we have career fairs, right? And then info sessions and different other networking events, I like to say. So maybe the engagement aspect of the job search too as well. So we talk about those strategies, and then of course, as well as graduate school planning. So if you're interested in that, we're a resource to help start that action plan, maximize that search, as well as, of course, I keep talking about career fairs, but if you've never been to one, we also have ways of strategies to maximize your preparedness for that. So in lieu of, or maybe upcoming of, we do have our career fair for your college, the social and behavioral sciences career fair that's happening this Thursday, I believe. Yes, March 6th. So I think that's a great opportunity, especially if you've never been to one, to go, and you can have as far as exploring the different employers that are there. We're going to jump to our website so you can see the types of employers are going to be there, of course, ahead of time. But note that there's other different opportunities too, as well. So again, this is part of that maybe engagement aspect I was speaking before about finding jobs, what it looks like too as well. And then you see to the right, we have our own workshops. So like I was saying before about our own preparatory workshops towards those competencies. We have, as you can see, using AI to maximize your resume. We have, of course, finding your job, search, hiring, interviewing. As you can see, the different ones that you can, of course, engage with that we have in pretty much every semester, especially in the summertime. And then, of course, we have a workshop that's happening tomorrow if you're available at 12 o'clock to prepare for the SBS fair that's happening on Thursday. So again, if you've never been and you're like, maybe I'm kind of curious to see what strategies I can get to maximize, again, my approach to the fair, because there are employers there offering opportunities in the form of internships and other engagements too as well. You can maybe come and get those strategies as well. And of course, I'm going to jump to our website right now, but of course you can, maybe one note on this slide is that you can make your appointments through your My Coyote portal. It's through Navigate to speak maybe one-on-one with the career advisor, or again, we have our drop-in hours too as well. So let me go to our website to just really quickly, we can see the website. Okay, great, thank you. So here, if you haven't been again to the Career Center's website, this is what it looks like. It has our drop-in times, hours here. So again, if you can't maybe get into a one-on-one appointment, we literally have hours and times you can see us every day if you really wanted to. Over to the right over here, you see our career resources all the way down to resume, cover letters, interview preparation. So of course, we may not be open 24/7, but our resources online definitely are. So one of the tabs, excuse me, that I have pulled up is called Cody's Closet. So if you're not familiar with that, it's one of our resources to where you can get not just rent out, but take with you free professional items. So that means it can be a blouse, a blazer. It can be maybe some shoes, right? So all of these articles are like new or professionally new too as well. So if you're like, I don't have anything to wear to the career fair, well, you can definitely get some clothes for that, free clothes. And then last but not least, sorry, there was a pop-up. I wanted to show you the SBS Career Fair. So again, this Thursday, you can see some employers that are going to be there. Again, if you've never been to a career fair, I highly recommend just getting your feet wet, if you will, of going and just experiencing one. Maybe even perchance if there's something that sparks your interest. But again, I have there's a workshop tomorrow to help kind to maximize your maybe attendance, but I highly recommend it, especially since your college kind of designs and builds these tailored towards your majors. But with that being said, let me know if there's any questions. And again, thank you for allowing me the space and time, a part of your session today, to kind of speak about our resources and events as well.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank
This is
you.
great. To kick things off, we did 2 events in the series so far. And just as we sort of get up to speed now, it's kind of perfect timing, I think, for everybody to hear a little bit more about the resources. And I hope everybody will make the most of these resources that are available to you. Thank you, Lauren. Does anybody have any questions? Do check it out. Check out the website. I threw it into the chat. And I will send it out with a recording of this event so that folks can follow up on that. And go to the career fair. I saw on the screen that there were museum organizations, there are park service organizations, and some of these other groups that definitely are going to be relevant to history majors. So thank you, Lauren. This is really helpful.
Thank you so much, Professor Murray, for having me. And thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, that's great to kick things off and to learn a little bit about these resources. And I really hope that you all make the most of this, especially when it comes to professional things like CV, resume, that kind of thing. It's always good to get somebody else's eyes on your ongoing work. Okay, I did not, and thanks, Michelle, Professor Lorimer, for joining us today. Professor Lorimer is really, as I think probably everybody here knows, and if you don't know, and you will know shortly, the real expert in terms of connecting our students with teacher education, credential program, teaching opportunities, and that kind of thing, along especially with Professor Michael Carr, who many of you know out from Palm Desert. But Professor Lorimer and Professor Carr are kind of a super friends, super group, in terms of really knowing everything that you need to know about getting not just a position as a teacher, but really being extremely well prepared for that. So I want to thank Professor Lorimer, and I want to welcome you, Michelle, to jump in at any point. You may know some of our guests. James Wiggins is calling in from Georgia. So I like this. I like having a little bit of sort of out of state experience. Some of our students are from all around the country. We got Kansas representing here, I think, with 2 of our friends here, and lots of other folks. So thinking about teaching standards and credentials and that kind of thing in different states is sort of one of the subtexts here. So thank you, James. And Alexander Ponce is joining us from a little closer to home, but with a sick kid at home, if you don't mind my sharing. So Alexander is logging in through Zoom. He's at the UC Riverside STEM Academy, and I may be getting that wrong, so I'm going to ask you to correct me there, Alexander.
No worries. It's part of Riverside Unified School District. It's Riverside STEM Academy, but very close. No worries.
Riverside STEM Academy. Sort of, I think, definitely sounds like honorary members of the UC community. Where I seem to have gotten that stuck in my brain that there was a connection. And then Hannah Knight in as and James and Alexander are both BA graduates. Hannah is a graduate of our BA and our MA program and our credentials program. A triple graduate, a 3-time graduate, 3-time alum of Cal State San Bernardino. If Alexander and James don't mind, I want to turn the floor over to Hannah for some opening remarks, and then Alexander and James, you can jump in with a few sort of opening thoughts, and then we'll kick it open to discussion about teaching at the 7 to 12 level.
Yeah, so I never know what to say because I think it changes every year, but just a little bit about me. So as Professor Murray said, I pretty much lived here for quite a few years, but I currently teach at Rialto High School. I've done world history, I've done US history. Currently, I am teaching AP World History AB 11, and then I stepped into a new role as AVID coordinator this year. So I think this is year 9 for me, being in the education system. And I've pretty much spent my entire time at Rialto High School, so I've been in this area for a very, very, very long time. And I mean, there's a lot to know, and by all means, I feel like the best way is to always ask questions because I never know exactly what to share. But I think the biggest takeaway from teaching at a high school especially is that you are gonna be doing more than just purely history. And I think we all kind of go out there thinking that's gonna be our own thing, but especially if you are stepping in at the high school level, middle school level, is that you are now very much part of their lives. As I just came from after school tutoring and some of that was history and some of that was not history. So I think that's kind of the biggest takeaway is that you're now going to become a very big fixture in someone's life. So I think that's my biggest takeaway right now.
That's a good one. And I always get reminded of some of these things that Alexander and James and others bring up, teaching students first and content second. That's such a good one to remember. James or Alexander, who wants to jump in next? Thanks, Anna. Thank you for joining us.
Would you like to go next, James?
Yeah, that's fine. Let's see. So, like they said, I graduated from Cal State San Bernardino. I got my credential from there. I got my master's from Brandman University, so I didn't go the same route, but so I taught in California for 8 years. I just moved it back out to Georgia in last June, so I started teaching here now. And it's worlds different. It really is. Let's see, but yeah, I spent 4 years teaching middle school. I've now been teaching high school now for 5 years. And, like Hannah said, you teach everything. I've taught US history, world history, AP, European history, government, economics. I'm currently teaching American government now. And a huge difference also between California and Georgia is in Georgia, government's ninth graders. So, like, that's what I grew up doing anyway. So, for me, it's just going back to, the old ways where in California, those are seniors. So,
That's a good big difference. Thanks, James. And that sort of jack of all trades theme as well, in terms of history, social sciences, and so many other things. Thank you, James. Thanks for logging in. My brother's over there in Atlanta, so I don't know how close that is to where you are.
he's about 5 hours from me. I'm about 30 minutes west of Brunswick. So, I'm still on the coast.
Another big state. All right. Thank you, James. I'm gonna ask Alexander to
No
jump
problem.
in and say hi.
No worries. Thank you. All right, so everyone, hi, my name is Alexander Ponce. This is like, can't remember how many times I've done this, right, Jeremy? But many times.
Get your
I'm happy
sandwich
to-
card stamped.
Hey, it's fine. That's right. My 10th one, I get a sandwich or something. That'd be great. Yeah, but I'm always happy to do this. I teach at Riverside STEM Academy. This is my 11th year teaching. I've taught a lot of the same things that Anna and James have both said, right? We've taught government, econ, world history, US history, all that stuff. And yeah, every time we come to this, I'm in the same situation, right? What do we say to like incoming, hopefully soon to be teachers, right? Like Hannah said, I always echo the same thing to you're teaching people before content. So, when you're thinking I'm going to be doing history every day we're going to be like delving into great sources and doing great stuff. I mean, the first thing is like, do you have your classroom management in order? Have you built relationships? Have you come up with routines that you're comfortable with? These are really the things that you really have to start thinking about your first years before you start thinking about anything content. You'll get there. And you'll definitely get to do the things that you've been waiting to do for a long time. But is people before content. That's one of the most important things to remember. Another thing that I often try to emphasize, especially because I teach at a place where I'm the only history department. I teach 10th through 12th grade, and I teach all the students there because our school is relatively small. I'm in a kind of unique situation where I don't have anyone else helping me except myself. So every time I get a chance to get a student teacher to come and help me, I'm happy to have them in my room because it's extra coverage that we could use for lots of reasons, and you get to pay it forward that way. But the reason I bring it up is because I say you don't want to choose to be alone. I'm good friends with my friend who's in the math department. I'm good friends with my friend who's in the English department. And even though you could be a lonely one-person department like yourself, you sometimes choose to either be on your own, or you can make friends, or go to other sites and find whoever you need to beg, steal, and borrow, because that's your first year, right? You're just surviving, and you got to find out ways to teach what you're going to be teaching tomorrow, and hopefully you get a chance to plan a week in advance, if that, right? But don't choose to be alone. You're not doing this on your own, but you can choose to be alone. So don't make that choice. And then before we go into more questions and stuff like that, because I have a whole list of things I guess you could, say you would think about before you start teaching. I guess the other one that I will talk about later if the question comes up is try to keep up with the conversations about education. They're ever changing. Like my district has initiatives that we follow for a couple of years, and then before we know it, we're changing and doing something different. I'm sure Hannah and James can attest to this. Like districts have initiatives and you're trying to follow what they do. A big acronym that we use over at RUSD, that's Riverside Unified School District, is UDL. That stands for Universal Design for Learning. It's all about giving the student agency about their own learning and finding multiple ways for them to access your standards and your learning. Basically about access, right, and equity, that you want to have your students try to find ways to demonstrate their mastery of learning in more than just a multiple choice test, an essay, and a presentation, right? So keep up with the conversations about education because they're ever changing, and they'll help you gain insight into what kind of district you're going to be working for, what sort of things you need to be beholden to a department. And if you philosophically agree or disagree with those things, it's certainly something to think about before you take on a job where you're going to be at a school where maybe you don't entirely agree with how they do things. So think really long and hard if you want to be part of that, because when you're in it, you're in it, and you got to be committed. Otherwise, it could be very tough for you there. So yeah, I'll just share that. And if we have more questions, I guess we can go with more of like my thoughts on different things. Thank you.
That's great, Alexander, James, Hannah, you've got us thinking about, I ask you all, speaking of super groups, to put together some really valuable kind of distilled knowledge of what you wish you'd known. And these questions of teaching students over content, establishing routines, classroom management, jack of all trades. The one, you're not alone, one is very good. I think my brother who teaches out in New York also found this. He found a network very quickly of neighbors, literally his classroom neighbor who did things really, really fastidiously. And so he was able to learn from his example. So the idea that you're not in an adversarial relationship with your neighbors or necessarily with your students is great. Keeping up with the state of the field. UDL is great, Universal Design for Learning. I found that to be kind of a state of mind. That's I find that that's a helpful way to think about it, as opposed to a hard and fast single way of doing things, but rather seeing it as a sort of evolving state of mind and approach to pedagogy. Universal Design for Learning, if that's a new term for anybody who's interested in being an educator, you should look into it, find out what it is, and get a little bit of a sense of what it is. It means, in theory, not having to make accommodations for any students, because all of your course materials are designed to accommodate all students in an adequate and empowering way. But again, I think I think it's a really exciting way to think about teaching, at least in my experience. These are all great, really great ideas to get us pointed toward a discussion. And we have a good half hour for questions and comments. And you all who are joining have three really terrific, thriving instructors to chat, to learn a little bit more from. And also Professor Lorimer, who can, Michelle, you can jump in at really any time to guide us. I'm going to share a document that has a couple events that Professor Lorimer and Professor Karp did several events with. So I've shared this out with everybody, and I'll put it in the chat here. Michelle, did you want to jump in?
Well, I think Hannah and Alex and the other and James also touched on a lot of the things that I usually start with my students in my teaching history class. I've kind of pivoted to focus a lot more on, when we talk about history, social science a lot, obviously, but one of the important things that I found that makes a big difference for the transition, for those of you even who are looking at teaching community college or at any level, is really focusing on the connection that you build with your students as the primary thing. That's what I focus on now at teaching at the university level. If I don't have a connection with my students, then I don't I don't feel like I don't feel like I communicate the content as well with them as I do, during terms that I have a really solid and deep connection with my group of students. So I prioritize that pretty heavily. I also focused a lot on encouraging my future teaching students um, to reconsider what it means to teach history, social science. A lot of you have been dealing with professors in our department who are phenomenal teachers, and so you have great examples. But for me, and maybe for Dr. Murray as well, growing up, it was a lot of like rote memorization. History was very like repetitive, and then you would have an occasional teacher who would do something quite different, but primarily it was just fill in the bubble, know the facts, and that's it. And I find that that's shifting for some students. I have students who come in with just these amazing stories about the educators that have influenced them, but we teach them the ways that we've been taught. So it's really important for us to think about the kinds of teachers or professionals, even if you're not thinking of going into teaching, how you want to communicate with other people and impact them, and to be really self-aware. And so I feel like even though I teach teaching history classes, it's become so much more like metacognitive, constantly thinking about how we approach people and the impact that we want to have before even beginning those interactions. So if you're at a national park as an interpreter or in the classroom as a teacher, the intention behind those interactions is really what's important before we can even get them to understand the historical context. And I think part of that is related to history being embedded in understanding multiple perspectives. And so like the skills that we try to impart through history are really incumbent on developing relationships with other people first, understand where they're coming from and why. So that's been a really a major touchstone for me in my classes. I've been assigning my students this book by Zaretta Hammond called Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain. There was one in the library there, like right by where Dr. Murray is. I had a copy of it in there on the shelf. I don't know if it's still there, but it's an amazing resource. It's a pretty big, like central piece. Those of you who are teachers, I'm sure are familiar with it. But now I make my students read it because it talks about the like brain science behind building connections and why history, social science. Yep, that's it. It's amazing. It's a quick read and it's so good. But it talks about that, like the cognition behind building connections with students and why cultural relevancy is so key to that, particularly in places like the Inland Empire, where we have students from historically marginalized backgrounds who need that support and need to feel heard. So I think that's it for now, but if you have any specific questions about my classes, for those of you who are MA students, if you want to join my teaching history classes, I'm happy to have you in there. And we can just do a different kind of focus, but yeah, that CRT in the Brain is so amazing. I love it. It's like one of my favorite books. So yeah, that's it. Let me know if you have any questions about anything.
That's great. And Aaron's the best class ever. And I think and I like that you're gonna trigger some of the some folks when you say CRT in the brain, so they're gonna get very excited, very nervous that this is sort of Christopher Rufo territory, which is great. It's great to disturb those folks. But it's nice. We've got two CRTs here: culturally responsive teaching as well as critical race theory. So great,
Yeah.
and both of which I'm sure are equally welcome. I think in the real world, but not in the sort of distilled world of contentious kind of Washington discussions. So go ahead and pass that down and take a look at this. I think, as everybody knows, this class 5700 that Professor Lorimer teaches is open to all MA students, but also to all undergraduate qualified students. And it's a really, it's a class that there are a lot of classes that my colleagues teach, and I think really earnestly think, oh, I wish I could sit in that class. And that's one of the classes. I think in terms of metacognition being so much of what we do, people aren't going to remember. This is like the worst kind of history, is like names and dates, as Michelle said, names and dates and sort of little factoids and that kind of thing. What they will remember is how you learned these kind of research skills, these kind of critical thinking skills, critical analysis, and that sort of thing, and writing and the kind of thinking and analysis that goes into a good piece of writing. So I think that sort of thing is crucial. Thanks, Michelle, and thanks for jumping in this evening. Great. Okay, lots already to think about in terms of teaching. For those who are excited about teaching at the 7 to 12 level, and I know that includes some of the folks who logged on here today. If you are excited about that field, and I see some folks, Joshua and Hayden, who jumped into this session, who are not just in our MA program. If you have thoughts, ideas, questions, that kind of thing. Also, on this document that I shared, this future history teachers document, there are a whole bunch going back to 2020 of events like this one that we're doing right now, and ones that Professor Lorimer and Professor Karp have done. So I'm going to throw that into the chat again, just in case you missed it. There's a lot. There's like 5 years of accrued events and sessions like this one. Lots of links, and each time we add a few. I'm sure there will be a few that'll come up in the next 20, 30 minutes that we'll think, oh, we got to throw that in there too. So stay tuned and check out that document. And this event will go at the top of that list. Hannah, do we want to go around the?
Yeah, I mean, I think questions are probably the best way to kind of, start it off. Like if anyone has any questions or anything about that, or what you wish to know or something like that. But I think one thing I do wish I would have known, just because I didn't add this in earlier, is that once you do your credentialing program, you're not done technically, because you'll learn about, so my year it was called VITSA. I don't know what it was called for James or Alex. But yeah, and now I think it's called induction, which in a sense is another credentialing program. Your credential is not cleared until you actually complete it. How this normally works is that your first 2 years of teaching in your position, and it is strictly for it's actually elementary all the way through the 12th grade level that you have to complete the VITSA/induction program. It's your first 2 years of being hired, and you actually have to complete it in a very strict timeline. I think they give you 5, Alex and James, and Professor Lorimer can correct me because I don't know the exact timeline, but I think it's like 5 years you have to clear it before you have to do the credentialing program all over again.
I think it's 5, yeah. I think it's 5, yeah. Yeah, it's 5, yeah. Where do you have it like preliminary for 5 years and you have to clear it within 5? That's what I remember, yeah.
Yeah, so, but your first 2 years of teaching, it's very much like the convention program in the sense that your first year is you're kind of doing the same thing as you'll be doing with your TPAs, which is lesson planning. You have an advisor from your district come out with for you, and then it is recording sometimes. And there's a whole document that you have to. Every district does it a little bit differently. Rialto Unified School District does actually pay for it. some districts don't, and that's another thing to kind of think about when you are applying to school districts, is that who pays for the induction program, who doesn't pay for the induction program. And this is usually done in your first 2 years, and, you know, I advise to make sure you do it in your first 2 years, so that way, once you finish it, you're done, you're cleared for your entire life, you just have to pay California every 5 years for your credential, so. But I think that's what I wish I would have done, because I did not realize that after the credential program, you're not done.
You have to clear the credential.
You have to clear it, because once you complete the credential program, you have the preliminary, which Alex and James brought up earlier. So it's technically a credential, but it's not complete yet. Not until you do the induction program. So.
All right.
Questions about what I just said, because I threw a bunch of information.
Some acronyms and definitely kind of inside baseball, but this is, as Hannah noted, the sort of what I wish I'd known aspect of things. James, were you gonna jump in?
I was just gonna say, yeah, there's gonna be a lot of acronyms, a lot of, oh my God, and I don't even know where to start. There's so many. You'll get used to it.
Yeah.
It's TPAs.
Yep.
Everyone knows what TPAs are?
Nope.
Okay, let's start there.
EPA, let's do TPAs.
Alex can jump into and James can. So TPAs is what you're going to be completing throughout your credentialing program. They restructured them a little bit differently than, because it's been probably about 9-10 years since I've done mine. But in a sense, you have to do everything from designing lessons for specific students. So it's English language learners and students with special accommodations. They have you design assessments, so tests, how are you actually, you know, checking in that they understand everything. And then finally, there is a video at the very end. And you have to complete these TPAs in order to actually get your credential in the first place. But it's throughout your entire credentialing program, and depending on how fast you go, I did the fast pace, like 9 months. Their deadlines are different.
Yeah, what Hannah's saying is exactly correct. There's multiple tasks now. I'm from back in the day when they called it PACT, PACT, but they changed it. It became ATPA like the year right afterward. Yeah, it requires everything she just mentioned. So get comfortable in front of a camera, because you're gonna have to do that and record yourself and send it to the state. And you save everything that you have, because it's gonna help you with induction, like Hannah had said, because you're basically gonna have to do EdTPA again when induction happens. But yeah, it's a lot of completing tasks on top of all the other homework that you have to do, that you'd have to do through your credentialing program too, because designing units and lessons that go along with it, learning about pedagogy, all while, you know, running your classes full time too. So it is a grind, but it is part of the process, and it's a good thing, because it'll teach you very early on how to do everything you need to do to design, planning, all that stuff.
Someone's got a question.
This was for Josh, though. I think that's his name, Joshua. I can't see the screen, but
James?
James in Georgia?
the one from Georgia, yeah, okay. How does that differ from state to state? You know, I know California has a lot of rules and regulations. Is it the same for you in Georgia?
So I think the biggest transition was like, again, I got so used to California, and, you know, the way that the district that I came from was, you know, you're the expert in this area, so we expect you. Here's the curriculum. You figure out how you want to teach it. Here's, like, you know, everything. And then I came to Georgia, and it was more structured. It was more, okay, here's what we expect. Here's how we expect it. You know, we're going to kind of like walk you through it for the first semester. After that, then, you know, then you're going to do it, but we're still going to keep an eye on you. And I think it also kind of, gets a little more affected too, because I'm at a school that's nationally ranked. So they're in the top 10% of the country. So they have like extremely high expectations. So it's not as laid back as it was in California. It's very structured. It's also one of the oldest schools in the country. It's from 1788. So they they hold their standards a little bit different, so it's
Is this
just like
governed
a
by the
learning
state,
curve.
the county, or the school board? Who governs or sets those rules?
Yeah, it's still the state level, but they take what the state level gives them, and then they've kind of increased it, so they've actually made it more rigorous than what the state requires. So, and I did see that when I was teaching at Canyon Springs in California as well. Like, they obviously California has a certain standard, but then Moreno Valley kind of lifted it up a little bit more with Canyon Springs. They were like, okay, here's what the state expects, but we expect just a little bit higher. So I think it honestly just can depend on the areas too. So
All right, thanks, James. Future history teachers.
One thing I want to add, I'm not sure if this was how it was when you all were in the program, but now there's a course that walks students through TPAs. So Hannah, I'm not sure if that's how it was when you were in the program.
It
But
was
they-
not there.
Okay. It's part of the program now. So they have like a class that essentially they're like being supervised through completing their TPAs, and are like they have their main advisor kind of walk through the process with them to really make sure that the students in the program are successful with it. And now I think they have like a 90% plus success rate with their TPAs here at CSUSB. And I think the only, exceptions are, I know I've had students who have struggled with it, who've reached out to me, but they've eventually passed. So there's a lot of supports through our program now.
Thanks, Michelle. That's good to know. Again, to Alexander's point of reaching out, not feeling like you're struggling in this, these are already some, the BITSA, the TPA, UDL, these acronyms. Ask, you guys know, the drill by now. If you want to learn, you got to be unafraid in terms of asking questions, asking for support. And Professor Lorimer, and others here in our program are here to answer those kind of questions. So make sure you ask. Joshua, speaking of questions, said you had some questions. Do you want to unmute or do you want to type them into the chat?
Oh, I don't mind talking. Am I
in.
coming in? Am I coming in fair?
Yes.
Awesome. So anyone can answer this one if you're able to. I'm new to Cal State. This year's my first year. I came from Crafton. So I don't know how the teaching credential program fully works. I was wondering how long the teaching credential program is and how much time should I give myself to complete it?
Came to the right place for that question, Joshua.
I can help with that since I'm always dealing with it. So there's different options. There's 3 tracks. Which to start with, the fastest track is 2 semesters. That's like track A. It's very fast, but I have students who have completed it successfully and are now working as classroom teachers. If it all really depends on if you need to work or not during the program, because that is pretty intensive, and you just do you take, I think, 5 classes a term, and you start your student observations. And the first semester, and then the second semester, you start student teaching. So it's really quick. The second track that most of my students do is track B, which is 3 semesters. And that spreads the coursework out. I think you take 3 courses each term, and you're doing student observations the first 2 semesters, and then the last semester you are doing your student teaching and going through your TPA cycles. So it's if you need to work, for example, you have other commitments outside of school, that's usually what students who have those responsibilities choose, because it gives them some time to do their other things. And then the third option is an internship track, which is very uncommon, but depending on where you live, there are opportunities. But really what the internship track is that you get a job as a teacher, and then you're full-time teaching in the classroom as you're taking your classes. So that works. I have maybe 2 or 3 students who've done that. Most of them are out in the Coachella Valley or up in the high desert, because there has to be a very specific need in those areas to hire a teacher who's not yet credentialed. So those are really in those really, really high need areas that happens. And I think in both of those cases, they got hired on at charter schools that are part of the public school system, but they're not actual public schools, like as a part of a district. But in those cases as well, they had experience teaching in various other forms, so they weren't just brand new fresh in the classroom. So internship is an option also, but the 2 main options are track A, which is 2 semesters, or track B, which is 3 semesters. So you just really decide the pace that you're willing to put yourself through. My students have told me that the credentialing, the College of Education tries to push them into track B much more heavily, the slower one. But a lot of my students will start off on track A, and if it's too much, then you can just reduce the number of classes that you're taking and switch over to track B. But those who have done track A found it manageable but challenging. Coming out of doing your bachelor's, though, it's not that big of a transition because you're already used to taking a lot of classes. So
There's a fourth.
it's yeah.
So there's fourth. If you go through the master's program, Master's of Ed, part of that is getting your credentialing. So there is the fourth, because that's 4 semesters plus, trust me, I know, and 4 extra classes. And it changes your ordering of classes up. So it makes things really complicated. But if you get your master's, you're at GMAS, that's still your credentialing track. You gotta go through the same process, same classes, same everything, and 3 extra classes. And they change your ordering up that you have to do them in because of the master's program. Which is a pain in the ass, I know, that's why I'm sitting here tonight. Because I couldn't get one of the classes.
Yeah, they have a program now that's been in for the last few years where you can do the CSU system has it now where you can apply your credential level coursework to a master's in education eventually. So you wouldn't necessarily complete it now as you do your credential.
No, they have a complete one track. At this point, they started 2 years ago. They have a complete one track, your master's credentials all in one lump.
Oh, okay.
My buddy Gabriel gets it. I'm going to go to his graduation laughing at him in spring. He's in the second cohort.
Okay, awesome.
I would say though, on that note, just with the masters and everything like that, just because many teachers do a master's in education, because of the fact that, yes, no, to be honest, a lot of teachers at from elementary through high school, they're getting their masters because you go up in pay. So many districts have a pay scale and it is based on your education level. So there's obviously, you would be credentialed, you start off at the credential level. And then every single unit just kind of adds you on, and masters is almost like it's like the second to last thing for Rialto. I would just need to go on to my doctorate to get the very, very last thing, but.
You're lucky you're in Rialto. A lot of schools don't do masters. Once you're done with masters,
That's very
you're
true.
done. That's why Rialto's.
That is very true. I think but it's not much. I think it's like 5%, but, the other thing, so many of them do masters in education because it is a lot tied to their credentialing. They get out. I did not do that. And I did a master's in history, actually while I was teaching, which probably was not the best idea.
Challenge.
It was like the first time I was doing all-nighters.
Yeah.
And so I think if you are going to pursue a master's, really kind of think about what do you want it for. History is my passion, and if I was gonna do my master's, I wanted to be in something, not that I'm not passionate about teaching, but you know, the subject itself, because if you do get your master's while you're teaching, it is a lot on your plate because, you know, you're signing up to mostly your own case, so.
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Hannah, for those insights and indeed, think about what you're taking on and make sure you've got your team and you've got the kind of support that you need to take these sort of things on. I also want to note Christian's comment here. There's a grant that you can apply for when you're in the credential program, up to $20,000. You have to commit to working in a Title I school for 5 years and clear your credential within 8 years. Michelle, are you aware of this? And Christian, do you have a link to that program? Or Michelle, can you give me
Yeah,
the
I'll post the
name?
link for it. It's
Oh,
the,
great.
yeah, like Golden State Teach Grant. I've had lots of students get it. They get it pretty quickly, deposit the money right in their account. And so it starts off as a grant. If you don't meet those qualifications, then it turns into a loan. So those
Is
are the
it a
big
state program or federal?
It's state, I
South
believe.
State, yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
so.
It is separate from the federal payback for student teachers.
Yeah.
And it is not in danger currently, unlike the federal payback for student
Yes.
teachers, for those of you who are wondering.
Yeah.
Because the federal payback, 60,000 over 5 years, is on the chopping block in this budget. It
Is that a
going-
public service loan forgiveness?
Yeah.
That's the one,
Yeah,
it is on the chopping block, it is going away, you people don't need to go to college, you're supposed to be stupid, don't you know? I mean, that's the only way I can look at that one, I'm sorry.
But I think
But that
that's,
one is all the government employees
My
get it
God,
too.
just $8.
this is, yeah, I mean, I think the public service loan forgiveness program and thanks, Michelle.
Decimate our vote.
Oh, and Alexander shared,
Decimate our budget.
Hannah is right. Check to see what your district's salary schedule will offer you when you have more education. Here's an example of the Riverside Youth Fund.
Yeah, I just wanted
Thanks.
to echo exactly what Hannah had said, that the more you if you get a master's, it's definitely beneficial, even just materially, because you will get most likely paid more. And at RUSD, for example, you can see that salary schedule will definitely bump
That's
you
the
up
state one.
1 or 2, you know, so yeah.
So RUSD is the state schedule.
This is the state's.
Right, Ontario, Rialto, and there's another one in this local area, I don't know who it is, have an extra category that says E for doctorate.
Yeah.
But
Nice.
that is a by district, and that's coming out of district funds, not out of the state.
I know that in Menifee, my daughter, if she gets her doctorate, she's a school psychologist. They pay like 2.5% more. She said she would have to work there for like 15 or 16 years to pay it. She's
Wow.
thinking of the JD like you have.
That's interesting. And
So if they're in that fifth schedule, that is coming out of school funds, that is not coming out of the state side, so that's, pay attention to that, because you can't assume it's one always gonna be there, or that's part of the system. If you take Dr. Piper's class on her special topics legal class, she goes into that in depth, she's like, you will get screwed like I did. I'm like, okay, so.
thanks, Charles. I think this does get into advocacy and solidarity and again, union work and that kind of thing as well. Which is of course complex. There's also a pay scale for the degree underneath the PhD, which is a specialist degree. Thanks, James. And
You give me anything for postgraduate certs?
I don't know, postgraduate certifications, is
Depends on the
there?
school
Like in
district and what it
maritime
is.
history or something like that?
No, it's usually things like ESL, Professor Kirchhoff has she's out at, right on the edge, Upland, she's in Upland, and they pay extra for certs. It's like $200 a year kind of thing, it's not a percentage, but she gets that because she's ESL, if you are a specialist with, oh God, all the gym teachers have it,
Yeah,
exactly that.
yeah, but I think additional pay stipends sometimes comes with the position. So for example, they used to pay a stipend if you taught AP, because that's more time. They do not anymore. Delta does not actually pay.
That's a
AP.
parent problem.
Yeah. So they don't actually pay and be prepared for more hours in AP. Admin coordinator though, coordinator positions actually do get a stipend, so it's not a lot, but it's something.
They still do bilingual pay?
Nope,
No,
Some schools will if you're an ESL instructor, which is different than bilingual. The whole reason that you read why AP doesn't get paid more now, because under the federal standard, AP is considered special ed.
Oh,
And parents threw a fit that their kids who were AP were in special ed. Parents are stupid.
right.
wow.
And you,
Well, the school boards thing is, I'm
no, it's
sure
just a category. It's
Yeah.
outside the norm.
school boards as a battleground, sure seems to be the norm. We only have about 3 minutes left, and the amount of time I asked Mr. Wiggins and Mr. Ponce and Ms. Knight to join us here today. So if there are any sort of concluding thoughts, I want to turn the floor to you. And of course, we'll leave a little time to spill over into the, an extra few minutes if we need to. But these are, it's always so great to have this sort of action-packed sessions. They feel like they're 5 minutes long to me. I don't know about you guys, but there's so much to talk about, so much to discuss. And yet I also don't want to impose too much on your time, but if there are other, Alexander or James or Hannah, if you want to, and Michelle as well.
I did see that someone had asked a question in the chat. It was when applying for a teaching job, what is the best way to stand out on your resume? I think that's a really great question. And just my quick advice would be ask yourself, what can you offer that another candidate can't offer? Do you play a guitar? Do you sing? And are you can you lead a choir? Can you coach? Do you like soccer? And are you interested in those kinds of things? And more importantly, can you apply those to your lessons? Like, do you bring in instruments for a lesson? Do you are you really passionate about field trips, and will you take your kids to a site that you'll be able to enjoy? Are you particularly passionate about projects, and do you like learning with your hands as opposed to doing other things the traditional way? And how does it apply to your teaching? I think that question is a really good one, because you should start thinking about that already, because a lot of candidates that you're going to be applying next to are in the same program as you. They've had the same classes as you. They know the same acronyms that you do. It's what do you offer that's different? I mean, and you have to really, really think about yourself personally. I mean, what can I offer that is just way different that no one or almost no one else can offer? That's how you should think about that question. Just my thoughts.
Thanks, Alexander, and thank you also for clearly demonstrating the kind of attentiveness that a great teacher does to the chat, because that one slipped through. Thanks for the
No
question,
worries.
Christian.
By the way, one of the best things about California, whether you plan on teaching here or not, is with the exception in New York, California is the only state that's accepted everywhere. There's like 3 states that you just hand them a credential.
Reciprocal credential. Right. James, did you find this was the case? Your California credential floated in Georgia?
It did, but as a heads up, switching your credential from California to any state, none of these states work together. They both fight each other. It took me probably 3 months to get everything settled, because neither California nor Georgia wanted to work together. They made that process so painful.
That's
And I
good
was
to know.
and I was going through the process of buying a home and doing it was a nightmare. So yeah, definitely make sure. And I mean, I gave myself, like I said, 3 months, and they fought me every step of the way. Both states did. It was terrible.
That
You
sounds like
made
a
them
lot.
want to do work. How dare you?
That sounds like a lot to keep in mind. My brother's doing a bar situation, and it's also
Yes.
likewise is a
Nightmare.
Hannah, did you want to jump in with some closing thoughts?
I mean, I think Alex said a lot of great things, so I won't echo too much of what he says, but knowing the districts too. I think that was a question I got when we were doing the teaching fairs and everything, like, do you know my school? So it's a little just, daunting, and everything like that, but learning your districts, I would say if you have the opportunity to sub as much as possible in the different districts, you kind of learn the ins and outs. You can also coach for the different districts without actually teaching there too. It gives you a really good insight into how the district works, and you learn really quickly, okay, I'm not going back to that school. Oh, that school is great. So then when it comes to hiring time and currently, I don't know, this is for our district, I don't know if Alex is saying the same thing with Riverside, but we're about to do a golden handshake, which is a really sweet offer for many teachers close to retirement age, and they actually get a lot more money, and so they're leaving. And that's actually, we're about to lose a couple of history teachers, and we all know the joke that history teachers die in their chairs, so those are very spare. But what's really nice about subbing is that one of our current teachers in our department right now he was a sub for years, and he's now serving as an intern teacher, as a history teacher, which is very rare too. So it gets you your in. People, as long as you're really diligent, you're kind of following through their sub plans, they will call you back. So
That's great. I want to just quickly say on that and that decision. Sub work, we are going to have another session specifically on substitute teaching work. Get money in your pocket, get your face known around town, get to know people. What Alexander said about making yourself distinctive in your application is good because it applies throughout this entire series. What sets you apart from somebody else on your resume? What special things do you bring? And then the other thing that also applies to everything that we're going to do in all of these career sessions is to know the position you're applying for and know the institution that you're applying for. Because if you demonstrate that, that can really set you apart from other applicants. And on the flip side, if you fail to, if they ask you a really basic question about the place you're going to work at, it doesn't matter how wonderful your freestanding application is all by itself. If you didn't show that level of respect for the institution that you're, or the district or the museum or whatever that you're applying to, that's going to be a really sour note in the interview. Suji, jump in.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about bilingual. Bilingual is kind of is bilingual officially beneficial just to get a job as a teacher?
I think it depends on the district, and
Especially I'm Korean, especially like Lochun area. There are so many Korean population there. So yeah, I'm just wondering.
it really depends on the area. I mean, I am not bilingual, but I actually teach at a school that is close to 80% Latino. So it really didn't factor for me. But every school is different. It's what they're looking for. It definitely doesn't hurt. Especially if you also get your credentialing in a language too, because that's always they love double credentials. That is kind of a double-edged sword because you might be put into like a foreign language class rather than teaching history. That's the thing that some of our teachers have experienced before. They have an English credential and a history credential, but they started out in an English teacher position. So that kind of goes back to knowing the school.
Ways are different.
Yeah, just knowing the school, knowing the district, what they want. So
Also to Alexander's point, echoing something you said earlier about connecting here, and is right, you could sub, tutor, coach, volunteer, just get involved. Also, if you're still in touch with an old teacher, reach out. Chess club, track team, music, all these kind of things. Terry.
My daughter, when she was getting her master's, she was subbing in special education, which her undergrad was. And then she interned at the 3 schools that she subbed at as a school psych. All 3 offered her a job, and she got to pick and choose. She did a good job, I guess. They were desperate.
Special education is probably one of the fields that is definitely in need of a lot more teachers. So if you have your special education credential, you're at the top of the list for many places because they're looking for you. So
One thing I want to mention too. Sorry, one thing just real quick. If you have another subject area that you're also pretty solidly proficient in, you can also consider taking a methods class in that if you're going to go into the credential program, and then you can get an additional credential. My student who's doing the internship track actually did that for science, and so he got hired as a science teacher as his main one, but now he's teaching science and history. So it just gives you options. If you have a skill set there.
Thanks, Michelle. And James noted one of the selling points for me getting my first job was the plan I had of doing battle reenactments and the congressional sessions for my students. So excellent. Yeah, in terms of really showing the what you bring. I see Margaret has a question, but first, Joshua, you had one more question and then to Margaret.
Yes. So, with the credential program, I was under the assumption that as I'm working on my bachelor's, I could do the credential program at the same time. But from what you guys are explaining, that it seems like that's a very, if not a very difficult thing, if not just impossible thing to do at the same time, because I'm
No.
taking 4 to 5 classes a semester. Is that a teaching credential? Is that
They
something you
have-
do after the bachelor's?
Generally, yes, but there's a seniors to teach program that you can do. So you can take up to, I think, 3 of your classes ahead of time during your senior year. You just apply for the seniors to teach. And so you take like that first set of the series of the foundation classes. So if you find that you have some room in your schedule during your last year, you can do the seniors to teach.
One thing to kind of note on that, and just because my fellow like teachers kind of went through it, so if you do start the teaching credential program while you're doing your BA, just kind of going back to the pay scale, because many people did not know this, that actually affected your pay scale. So they actually did not start as high as other people on the pay scale for the school that they were at, because technically those units they took while they were doing their bachelor's that went towards their teaching credential were considered to be under the umbrella of BA. So that's one thing we learned, we didn't realize and kind of found out later on about.
Maybe this is kind of a union question. I don't know if you know it, but I was reading that in the Times that the Pasadena School District is laying off 150 people because of enrollment drops. And I'm wondering, are many districts doing that? That's the first I ever read or saw recently. In my lifetime, I've seen it a couple of times.
I mean, nothing in my neck of the woods. Pasadena might be because of what
They're a
happened
very
recently.
fairly
with-
affluent neighborhood with older
but
empty nesters.
yeah, but enrollment does tend to factor into how many teachers get hired and everything like that.
I don't know if they're all teachers, they just said total number.
Yeah, it could be everything from all the way up that district level down, but I haven't heard that from my district. My school alone is almost 3,000 students, so
You're good for a while.
I think we're
I
okay.
heard it for smaller districts, particularly around the LA area. I work with the UCLA History Geography Project quite frequently. And they do a lot of PD in those little districts, and it's happening a lot over there. But I think based on what you're all saying, it's these areas with older populations, they have less school-aged children in there. So yeah, it's happening in those smaller districts around LA. But I haven't heard about it in our area yet.
I was just looking.
Sorry, I want to
down-
say a quick, James said he has to hit the road. Thank you, James, for joining us in from Georgia.
Thank you.
Sorry, Michelle, to interrupt there. I just wanted to, James noted that he had to hit the road. Thank you, James. And then, sorry, Margaret had a question that you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, this is for Dr. Lormer. You had mentioned your student who's teaching history and science. I was actually curious about that. Do you have to have, and I'm sorry if this was already explained, but do you have to have some sort of degree or what's the word I'm looking for? A minor, yeah, in that in order to have like a second thing, like if I wanted to do English or something along those lines, would I need to do that or can I test for that?
You do take the CSET exam for
Yeah.
that subject area, and then do a methods class for
Okay.
that subject area. So that's what he did. He did his methods class, he did his CSET in science, and he's still working on his credential. His internship track is much longer than the other tracks, but he's already working as a teacher while he's doing it. So the pressure is not the same because he's getting paid while he goes. So yeah, those would be the things that you would need to do. You would need to do the CSET in that subject area, and then you take a methods class for that subject area also.
Okay, so just like no proof like that I took any English or science classes or anything like that, just the testing.
Yep, just the testing. They want the money. And
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
that's how Pearson works. They want your
Yes.
money.
In English, and you become a straight, that doesn't matter.
It does not,
Just
your
strictly
degree
the
does
test.
not necessarily factor in when it comes to that, like Professor Lormer is correct, like it's taking the CSET. And then once you do that, and then you follow the requirements with the class, you can teach any class, which is,
That means,
Insane.
yeah, that means even though I just have a kind of BA from the history department, just can I teach Korean classes?
Yeah, if you-
just have.
if you pass a CSET exam for foreign language, then yeah, I
She
mean.
passed Korean.
I mean,
Maybe
one
I'm not-
hundred-
Do not assume that, do not assume that, do not assume that.
but I mean, 100%, I mean, it's the CSET, so which CSET is a.
You being these people who don't speak, they can't pass the exams because they don't speak.
But I know her, she would.
Yeah, I mean, if you've had experience teaching in different contexts, then
Yeah, this student he had worked at the Living Desert Museum for years and had taught in their education department. He had a pretty solid background in science already. And I mean, the intent of the CSET is that you are proving your subject matter competency by passing the exam. So that's really, I mean, that's the intention. If you can pass it, then you have subject matter competency. In our department, we have a CSET waiver program so that you don't have to do that. You can take this, you can prove through your coursework and by taking 5,700 that you've met those qualifications. So if you're interested in that, I can review your transcripts to see if you meet those qualifications, and you can take maybe an additional class or two that you might need to meet it. But you know, that's really the intent of the CSET, even though maybe it's slightly ridiculous.
Biological.
In practice.
Teach in the military.
I would strongly recommend you not bring that up.
probably not that. The CSET waiver that Professor Lorimer noted is on our, is on the homepage of our pre-credential teaching track. And also that document that I initially shared with everybody, I'll share one more time because it has a lot of sessions, including, I think, 2 sessions with Professor Lorimer and Professor Karp. So that document is here, and if you're even potentially interested in teaching, I hope you bookmark that. I often say to students, take a look at these materials, and if you still have questions, then come to me, especially because Professor Karp and Professor Lorimer have taken a lot of time to put together some really, really great sessions and really great materials that if you spend an hour or half an hour or 2 hours, whatever, you're going to anticipate a lot of, the questions that you might have. And that then will lead you to other questions. And so if you get some of the rudiments from that document and from these materials here, then we can have much richer conversations about job searches and all kinds of other fun stuff. So check out those materials. For those who are joining in person, don't worry, I'll send those links to you guys as well. I do want to move toward wrapping up because we're about 15 minutes over time and we have imposed on our guests enough, and then we can go on and talk about our historiography reading. Susan's going to lead us to that. A huge thank you to Professor Michelle Lorimer for joining us, Alexander Ponce, Hannah Knight, James Wiggins, who I think hit the road already. Thank you all for your wonderful questions. It's always so much fun. I have so much fun with these sessions. So thank you guys for joining. It's always great to catch up with you, Alexander and Hannah. And thanks, Michelle. You're like my office neighbor. It's right next door here. Thank you guys. We'll see you again soon. I'm going to shut down the Zoom for our students and then open it again for those who are in 6004. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.